Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me again today. This is your host, idjester. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. And tonight, yes, tonight, and every Monday for the foreseeable future, we're going to be running a 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons campaign here in the wonderful Fantasy Grounds virtual tabletop program. So I had already done a video a couple weeks ago on the 5th edition rules and such. And since I know a lot of players out there aren't that familiar with 4th edition, haven't delved into it very much, or maybe they had back in the day, I thought I would give everyone a refresher course on just the basic overview of 4th edition so that when we're playing this in Fantasy Grounds, you can follow along and keep track of exactly what we're doing here, following the 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons rules. I love 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. It is probably one of my all-time favorite. I was not a big 3.5 3rd edition and then 3.5 edition guy. I enjoyed 3.5 edition, and of course I'm not going to get into a big debate about which edition's the best and all that. I'm just kind of giving you my thoughts and opinions on things. 3.5 edition was okay in the beginning. I think they just released too many things that made it too, I don't know, unusual, wanky, and just didn't quite fit the bill for me after its initial release. And the other thing that kind of turned me off was they released 3.0 edition and then re-released 3.5 edition just like a year and a half later. So all the stuff that you had bought for 3rd edition was kind of null and void, and you had to rebuy everything for 3.5 edition. And that kind of threw me off as well. Just the fact that they did that and kind of almost double dipped on everything. 4th edition has been wonderful. Just an absolute wonderful system. I think it brings a lot of tactical advantages to the player. There's a lot of interesting things. The combat flows differently and plays differently, and I think that's kind of why a lot of people got turned off to 4th edition, just because it was so different than the other editions of Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of people just say that it's not really Dungeons and Dragons, and I just kind of equate that to the fact that it's kind of like a calzone to a pizza. If you're so used to pizza and you like pizza, um, ordering a calzone, you expect it to be a pizza, then you're gonna kind of be disappointed that it's not a pizza. But if you go in thinking it's sort of like a pizza and it's still really, really good, then you probably enjoy 4th edition as well. So that's kind of my take on the 4th edition thing. But anyways, let's get into kind of just a basic overview on characters, similarities, differences between the different editions. As you see here, I'm using the wonderful Fantasy Grounds program. You can, of course, find out more information about Fantasy Grounds on their website, and it is also on Steam. You can download and purchase it on Steam as well. It's a virtual tabletop that lets you play many different kinds of gaming systems in this program, not just Dungeons and Dragons, but a lot of the other Pathfinder, Savage Worlds. There's all kinds of different rule sets that you can purchase if you are not familiar with Fantasy Grounds. Be sure to check them out. They are very interactive with the players and the DM. Keep track of lots of information, and this is one of the reasons I'm using Fantasy Grounds for my 4th edition campaign, is that it does a wonderful job of actually keeping track of all of the nuances that kind of made playing 4th edition D&D kind of cumbersome. I will admit that face-to-face 4th edition D&D is a lot more bookkeeping, a lot more work than normal editions, and I think, again, that's probably why a lot of players got thrown off. But fortunately for us, we have this wonderful Fantasy Grounds program, and it will actually keep track of all that behind-the-scenes information and be able to manipulate it that way, so that when it's a player's turn or monster's turn, we can quickly and easily see exactly what kind of effects are going on with it and what saving throws need to be done and everything. You can see here I've just got a little setup here of a couple creatures and a couple PCs here. We have Mira, and of course we have Shivra here. And we're going to look at these characters just to kind of give you an overview of exactly how a character in 4th edition and what the differences are. You can see here as we bring up our little character sheet for Shivra. You can see it's a Drow Hexblade is what we're actually playing. Like just about every editions of Dungeons & Dragons ever, you have Strength, Constitution, Dexterity, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. And you're going to be using these base stats and coming up with a modifier that is going to be applied based on your original stats. Basically, you can figure out your modifier by taking your total stat score and subtracting 10 points from it, and then basically you're going to take half of whatever's left. So for example, we have a dexterity of 16, we take 10 away from that, we're going to leaves ourselves with 6. Half of 6 is 3, that is going to be our modifier. You can see that. 10, you take 10 away, it's 0, we have half of 0 is still 0, so we got no modifier for that one. And of course you can actually end up with negative numbers as well. Here we have a wisdom of 8. Take 10 away from it is -2. Half of -2 is -1. So that's how we come up with our modifiers. And everything we pretty much are going to be doing inside of 4th edition is going to be based upon the modifiers that are based on your original stats. One of the, I will say this probably quite a few things, but one of the new things for 4th edition is that characters start at level 1, or whatever your DM is currently running a campaign for. But unlike a lot of the other editions, 4th edition actually goes up to level 30, and it's basically broken up into 3 tiers. From level 1 to 10 is heroic, level 11 to 20 is epic or paragon, and level 21 to 30 is paragon or epic, one of those two. I might have switched these back and forth. So it's broken up into tiers. Just like every other edition of Dungeons & Dragons, you're going to get yourself an armor class value, which is going to be based upon what kind of armor protection you're wearing, and what your dexterity modifier is going to be. You can see in this case, we have a 3 dexterity. You can tell that we're going to add 10 to that and come up with 13, so this character is not wearing any armor. One of the cool things about 4th edition is that you're not just attacking somebody's armor all the time. There are other stats that you can attack as well. And in this case, there's Fortitude, Reflex, and Will. Fortitude is basically going to be the same basic stats that you're going to be using for your other characters based upon your Strength or Constitution modifier. And your reflex is going to be the same thing. It's going to be based upon your dexterity or intelligence modifiers. And last but not least, your wisdom, which is going to be based upon your charisma or your charisma modifier. So you're going to end up getting a total result for your fortitude, your reflex, your will. Initiative's pretty much calculated like every other edition of Dungeons & Dragons. You're just going to get your dexterity modifier, you're going to roll a 20-sider, and that's basically going to get you your total initiative number. And initiatives counted just like every other edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Those with the highest initiative number will go first, followed by all the ones down the chain. So initiative obviously is very important if you want to act first. This is all kind of the new part, and it's kind of built into the system a little bit differently than what you're normally expecting. For you 3.5 or Pathfinder players, you will see hit points here of 23, which seems like quite a bit. And it is quite a bit because normally if you're even playing 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, you're going to start with a character between 6 to 11, maybe 12 hit points. This is actually calculated differently. It's based upon your race and your class and your constitution modifier. And all those combined together are going to give you a total number of hit points. So you can see in this case, our Drow Hexblade has a total hit points of 23. You can see a new value here called Bloodied, and basically the Bloodied value is half of whatever your total hit points are, rounded down. So half of 23 is, what is that, 11 and a half? Yes, 11 and a half, so obviously going to round that down to 11. So in this case, anytime this character falls to 11 hit points or less, they're going to get the bloodied value, and that can come into play when some of the powers activate. You might have a power, and we're going to talk about powers here shortly, but you might have something that says once you reach a bloodied value, something happens. One of the really cool things about 4th edition, and again, I did say that, and I'm going to say that a lot because, as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of 4th edition, is the healing surge value. This represents basically how many times per day that you can get healed, whether by magical means or by drinking potions or anything like that. So basically this character can get healed 6 times per day. The reason I really like this is that there are character classes that will allow you to spend your healing surges, but there's also magical items that will let you spend your healing surges. And you definitely it kind of spreads the healing out. You don't need like a dedicated healer. Obviously, if you have a dedicated healer, it makes things go a lot of really easier. But spending a healing surge value lets the characters basically regenerate their hit points by themselves, so you don't need a specific healer in the group to basically just run around healing everybody all day long. And that's one of the fun things about 4th edition, is that it lets players play different kinds of characters and lets them focus in on playing other characters other than just healers for the group. I will say that 4th edition is one of the very heavy editions with roles, and what I mean by roles is you have strikers, basically those characters that can come out, do lots of damage. I mean, they just excel at doing damage to other characters. There's defenders which help protect themselves. They're very hard to hit, and they also protect other characters as well. There's controllers. These characters are characters that are going to come out and control the battlefield. They're going to have area of effects on the battlefield that are going to damage the enemy or maybe heal your allies. They're going to kind of control where and how other creatures interact with you. So there's many different kinds of classes out there, and I think that a nice balanced party has a little bit of each of these different classes, as opposed to the normal D&D where you have, your fighter, your cleric, your mage, and your thief. It's kind of broken up into, you don't necessarily need a fighter, a cleric, a thief, and a mage, but you basically need a controller, a striker, a defender, kind of class to help balance the party out. When you're spending healing surge, back to healing surge. When you're spending healing surge, you're basically going to get a number here, which is basically going to be 1/4 of your total hit points rounded down. So 1/4 of 23 is 5 point something something. So we're just round that to 5. So anytime this character spends a healing surge, they're going to earn 5 points back, assuming they're not getting bonuses from other classes or races. Other bonuses that maybe a cleric says when they give you a healing, allow you to spend a healing surge, they'll give you extra points along with that. If this character was just going to spend her own healing surges per day, you can see that she can do it 6 times and 5 points a time. So you basically can see that this character can heal 30 hit points back basically per day. 4th edition uses failed death saving throws. So basically you're going to try and make a saving throw. If you roll 1 to 9, you fail. If you roll 10 to 20, you succeed in your check. Once you make 3 failed death saves, your character is killed. Speaking of saving throws in this game is basically a 20-sided dice. If you roll a 10 or higher, anytime you need to make a saving throw, you are successful. If you roll 1 through 9, you are unsuccessful. So saving throws are completely, basically 50-50 in whether or not, actually it's 55 to 45% on whether or not you are actually successful on your saving throw. And you can see I can just take the dice and throw it, and we roll a 6. That would be a save failure. Lots and lots of different effects are going to be present in the game that are going to give you saving throws from being knocked down, saving throws from taking ongoing damage. You'll be spending a lot of time making saving throws, and creatures and monsters will also be doing that as well. And of course, we have some dark vision and special senses that your different races or classes might give you. Let's move on, shall we? All right, here is basically the outline of what I had mentioned earlier. Your defenses is now what it's called. Your defenses are a combination of your armor class, your fortitude, your reflex, and your will. So you can walk around as a big, heavy, armored fighter with huge armor and, have a really high armor class. But if you got a really poor reflex or really poor will, the enemies might be targeting your reflex or your will saving throws. So some character classes focus in on maybe just armor class and fortitude. Others might focus in on reflex and say will saving throws. So there's a good combination that the monsters and the characters can, even if you're fighting against a creature that's extremely hard to hit, you might be able to use attack against its fortitude or attack against its reflex. And basically here's the calculation. You're going to add 10 to whatever your base stat is, any armor, any kind of miscellaneous, etc., etc. And of course you have your different weapons pretty much involved in that as well. If we look at our skills are kind of like set up like similar-ish to 3.5 edition, but not exactly. You're going to have aerobics, arcana, athletics, bluff, diplomacy, dungeoneering, endurance, heal, history, insight, intimidation, nature, perception, religion, stealth, streetwise, and thievery. And based on your character stats and whether or not you're trained in it, you're going to get a total number. From that number, you're just going to roll the dice to try and beat whatever the difficulty class, the DC difficulty class, is your DM assigns. So if I have a difficulty class of maybe a 13 for aerobics, acrobatics, I should say acrobatics. Let's say I have a 13 DC I need to beat. I'm going to roll a 20-sided dice. I'm going to add to it whatever my total ability modifier is and get a result to try and beat that difficulty class. Very similar to a lot of the other additions to Dungeons and Dragons. These characters might not actually be set up exactly. I've noticed a few things with them. Let's just look at her character really quickly to see. Yeah, this one seems to be. This one was already built. Shivra was already built into the system, and I didn't add her in. I made this character here through the DDI builder, and I should mention that one of the advantages with 5th edition or with 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons is that you can actually still get all of the Dungeons and Dragons insider information, which you have access to if you're still a subscriber. Of course, that includes the character builder, the D&D compendium, the adventure tools. Of course, you have access to the Dragon Online magazine, the Dungeon Online magazine, the character name generator, and of course, the character sheets. This is one of the reasons that I really, really enjoyed 4th edition. The fact that all of this information was online, I had access to it, I could build characters, I could send my friends my characters, they could send me their characters built from the DDI builder, I could import those into the DDI, and then I could quickly and easily just come in and take a look at one of the characters. Now let's choose this one here. I can load that character up, and I can actually see if everything is green here. I know they built it properly. They're not trying to. They didn't use too many extra powers. They didn't add too many extra stats. Ability points were adjusted right. The trained skills were adjusted right. They selected the proper powers, they selected the proper feats, everything was good, they got their equipment and everything. This is one of the huge successes for 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. The fact that you can do this information, characters can be created online with all the information that they had access to, and as 4th edition evolved and they came out with more books and more information, more races, more classes, more feats, more skills, more everything. It was all built into the compendium, and the compendium was also incorporated into the builder. So you had access to all this information at your fingertips. You could quickly and easily keep track of all that information in between in between play sessions. You could get together with your friends online. They could adjust their characters and add equipment they might have found or magic items they might have found. When they went up to the next level, all they had to do was come in here and actually just click on add a level, and then you could work your way up through the builder. Of course, then they could just print out their character sheet and bring it to the next session. They could email me their character. I could bring it in the builder. I could have access to it. While at the game, I could have all their characters there on my laptop, and then I could print out their character sheets if they forgot to bring them, or they couldn't print them out, or whatever the case may be. So just having access to all this stuff really made 4th edition much more accessible. If we had any questions about anything, of course you could just launch the compendium and you could do a quick search for, I don't know, let's say we're looking for feats, maybe enlarging a spell. Boom, I could just click on here and get access to all the information for enlarging a spell. Tells you all the information you need to do, where it's located, which book it's in, what page it is, if it's been updated, if it's been changed at all. Just wonderful access to that. And that's one of the advantages right now to still playing 4th edition as opposed to playing a 5th edition. If you've watched some of my other campaigns on my website right now, you know that we've got a couple 5th edition games going on. Unfortunately for us, we only have access to the Player's Handbook right now, and it's going to take some time before we actually get enough information out there between the Monster Manual Guide, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and any other 5th edition material that's going to come out. It's going to be another good 3, 4, 6 months before 5th edition really starts taking hold and getting its stride. Right now, it's kind of just kind of bare bones right now, and just not a lot of information, not a lot of access. Now, with that said, I should mention that 4th edition, they're no longer, as of last December, updating it or adding anything to 4th edition. 4th edition is done. They put all their energy and resources into creating 5th edition and getting that out here in August of 2014. So for the last 8 or so months, there hasn't been any updates to 4th edition. There won't be any more updates to 4th edition. But basically, all of the 4th edition material is still, you can still have access to it, you can still enjoy it, you can still play it. And again, that's one of the reasons I find 4th edition to be so so much fun, is that it's easy to understand and it's easy to play, and it brings a lot of tactical, interesting information to the characters. And it is fully fleshed out. We've had a good 4.5 years of updated materials. There are probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 some books, maybe even more than that, I don't know. So there is quite a bit of information out there for 4th edition. Again, skills. This character I think is a little bit better. Let's go ahead and use this one to show you. Abilities here, you can see the abilities based upon your race and your character class. Here's your armor proficiency, your weapon proficiencies, any kind of special abilities. Insight bonus, I can just simply click on that within Fantasy Grounds and actually see what that information is. Gain a +2 racial bonus to insight. Wonderful. Primal Guardian. When you're not wearing heavy armor, you can use your Constitution modifier in place of your Dexterity or Intelligence modifier to determine your armor class. Excellent. So all that information is built into Fantasy Grounds, which you can import when you parse your D&D information account and have access to it all. Inventory, again, a lot of just regular stuff from other previous editions of Dungeons and Dragons. You're going to add different equipment, different items to your character. And of course, anytime you want, you can click on the information to find out exactly more about it. Hide armor, how much it weighs, if it gives you any bonuses or whatever. So inventory is pretty much the same. Notes, pretty much the same. Here's the big and most interesting thing, and this is what I want to kind of cover for you players out there that might not have played 4th edition or it's been a while. This is basically an overview of your character's powers. Unlike a lot of other editions of Dungeons and Dragons, you're basically going to have powers broken up into based upon your character class, and you're going to have access to different powers, and these powers you can choose from and add to your character as you level up. So there are basically 3 different kinds of powers for characters. There are at-will powers, and they are always in green. So anytime I look at anything, if it shows a green border or anything, that basically means it's an at-will power. And you can also see that it shows you here it's an at-will power. And tells you whether or not it's a weapon or arcane or whatever the classification may be. It shows you what kind of action it takes, and of course it shows you if it's a melee weapon, a ranged weapon, or whatever. And then of course it shows you here what exactly this power does. In this case, it targets one creature. You're going to use your dexterity versus armor class, and of course you're going to do 1W. In this case, it means one weapon based upon whatever your weapon happens to be for this character. If we look at, we don't actually have a weapon implement into this character at this point. Let's see if Shira has one. Yes, so you can see obviously she's got a blade of annihilation here. So if I go under my powers, and I look at my melee basic attack here, it tells me 1W plus strength modifier damage, and all it's going to do is reference back to whatever weapon I'm using. In this case, it's a blade of annihilation, which looks like it might be not finished set up. I apologize for that. But basically, that's going to be your outline of basically what you're going to be doing. Let's see if we could add an implement here. I won't worry about it. That's all right. We look at powers. So we have at-will powers, which are always green. These, for at-will powers, you can use these powers. Characters can use them over and over and over and over and over and over and over again as much as they want. At will. Anytime they wish to use this power, they can use it. So I could use a ranged basic attack, and just time after time I could just use a ranged basic attack. No problem whatsoever. Melee basic attack, same thing. I could even use my storm spike. I could use my dynamic assault. I could use my swarming locust. All these are at will powers, so I can use them as much as I want. And of course some of these might give you different bonuses and such. This one here, it says it's going to affect each creature in the blast. It's close blast 3. And each creature in the blast is going to get targeted by a wisdom versus reflex. Remember I was talking earlier that you can target things other than people's armor classes. In this case, you can attack reflex. So they're going to have to, you're going to basically be going up against another defense, which is a reflex. And of course it tells you how much damage it does, and it also tells you if there's anything else that happens. A blast creates a swarm of locusts that lasts until the end of your next turn. Within this zone, enemies grant combat advantage. Excellent. So you could use this when this opportunity comes up without any issues at will powers anytime you want. The next classification of powers are encounter powers. Encounter powers is basically a power you can use once per encounter for most of them. There are a few powers such as Second Wind. You spend a healing surge, that you can use more than once an encounter power. But let's just say encounter powers, you can use these once during an encounter. What is an encounter, you might ask? Encounter is a set of, it's a combat encounter that lasts a certain amount of time during a set up period against a certain number of enemies. So, for example, if your PCs are under attack by, say, 20 goblins, they fight the goblins off and the goblins run away, and your PCs decide to follow them, that encounter's over. If they follow them through the dungeon and they find their headquarters where they're hiding out, a new encounter starts at that point, so you would have access to your encounter powers once again. So basically, an encounter power just has access to these powers once during an encounter, but as soon as the encounter is basically over or altered because the creatures ran away or you ran away, the PCs ran away, or some kind of intervening thing, a wall comes down and separates the two warring factions, and you have to then maneuver and move to get to a new location to encounter new enemies. That encounter powers would reset at that point. And last but not, and these are always in red. So if you look at anything ever in red, you will know here within Fantasy Grounds, and pretty much Fantasy Grounds is using the default information from all of the 4th edition books. So if you look in the books, green at will are green and red are encounter powers. Last but not least, our daily powers. These are like your ultimate powers if you play online gaming. These are very, very powerful attacks. Sometimes they will let you do multiple things, and they will usually be very, very dangerous, very do a lot of damage. They can alter things. Let's look at Fire of Life if we don't mind here. So we're only going to do 1d6 plus your wisdom modifier fire damage, which is not a lot of damage, but it does do ongoing 5 fire damage. And you can see save ends here. So anybody we hit with this, they're going to take 5 fire damage at the start of their next turn, and then they have to save. And as I mentioned, to make a save, they have to roll 10 or higher on a 20-sided dice. If they don't save the first round, then they'll keep taking fire damage, and they keep taking fire damage and over and over and over and over again until they finally save or they drop to 0 hit points. If a target drops to 0 hit points before it saves against the ongoing damage, one creature of your choice within 5 squares of the target regains hit points equal to 5 plus your Constitution modifier. So this is a great power to just cause a lot of enemies in a burst. So we have an area burst 1 within 10 squares. Cause lots of enemies to drop to 0 hit points. Then it's going to heal your allies 5 plus your Constitution modifier back in hit points. So it's a great way of damaging the enemies and also granting your allies additional healing. And of course, after effect, one creature of your choice within 5 squares of the target regains hit points equal to your Constitution modifier. And of course, on a miss, you have half damage. So you can see these are pretty powerful attacks. These are only first level characters that can do quite a bit of damage, especially if some of the enemies don't make their saving throws. They can end up taking 5 for just 2 or 3 rounds. That's an extra 15 points of damage. So quite a nice, powerful attack. So, and of course, these are a gray border. These are daily powers. But of course, you can only use this 1 time until you take a long rest as opposed to a short rest. Short rests are basically 10 to 15, 20 minutes of downtime that your characters would have where they can just rest, get some water, get some of their strength back, but not enough time that they can actually fully rejuvenize and get their full, their full strength back, such as when you take a sleep overnight or something like that. So yeah, you daily powers, you can only use these once a day, so you have to find the right opportunity. Encounter powers, you can use these guys once during an encounter, and of course at wills you can use any time you want. As far as combat goes, so let's talk a little bit about combat so you know some of the differences here from whatever system you're used to. I'll just bring out Mira here to give you kind of an example of what's going on here and give you some basic overview of the way combat operates. A lot of powers will allow you to shift or slide or pull or push characters, and so I kind of wanted to go over what all this means. So for example, this power, the target shifts up to 2 squares as a free action. Um, a lot of things will say shifting or sliding or pushing or pulling. So first thing we want to cover is shifting. Anybody can shift. It's basically a move where we're going to move. Let's say we've got to shift. What was that power? Probably won't be able to find it again. Must have been the other one. Let's try this one. Yep. All right. So the target shifts up to 2 squares as a free action. All right. So you can activate this power, and in this case, this character can shift 2 spaces. So 1, 2. Shifting, there are no requirements as to where or when you can, not when, but where you can shift to. So in this case, if something activated to let Mira shift 2 spaces, she could shift 1, 2 spaces. She could shift, I'll go back here. She could shift 1, 2 spaces. She could shift backwards if she wanted to get away from enemies, 2 spaces. She could shift over here 2 spaces. So shifting, there's no requirement to where you can shift to. Some powers talk about pulling a creature. In this case, let's say the power said after you activate this power on a hit, you could pull an enemy 2 spaces. Pulling an enemy, there's really no requirement other than the creature must move towards you closer 1 space each time you activate it. So if we were going to activate that here against this bandit, you can see that Mira is 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces away from him. So she pulled him 2 spaces. She could not pull him into this space and this space because he has not gotten any closer in the number of spaces. She could pull him into this space because he's now 3 away. She could pull him into this space because he's now 3 away. She could pull him into this space because he's now 3 away. Once she pulls him into that space, she could then pull him into this space. This space would only be their only 2 options. She could not pull him into this space because he would still be 3 away. So the only requirements on a pull is that each time you pull the target, it must enter into a space that is slightly closer than you. So for example, if for whatever reason, I'll just put there's a fire going on in this space here. I should have used red, but we'll just assume that. Nope, I want to just go back to normal mode here. Alright, in this case, if she had the ability to target this creature and pull him 2 spaces, she could pull him here and then pull him into the fire, and that would be a great maneuver. Whoa. That's not what I wanted to do, but thank you very much. I want to reveal this here. I'm not sure why I put a reveal on it, just because I'm all click happy, I guess. So there we go. For whatever reason, I must have clicked the wrong button up there. So that is the slide and pull, and of course we have push, which is the exact opposite. In this case, if Mira was going to have an ability to push the target, say 2 spaces, she could end up pushing him 1, 2. Again, every time she pushes him, he must be 1 space farther away than she currently is. So you can see, obviously, 1, 2, 3, 4. She could not push him into this space because he's still only 4 spaces away. So she could push him into these 2 spaces here. She could push him 1, 2 spaces there. She could push him 1, 2 into there. So lots of different options there for her on pushing, pulling, and sliding characters, which is very important to Dungeons and Dragons, 4th edition, anyways. When we look at characters and what they can do on a turn, basically each character has access when it's their turn to activate on the initiative turn. They have access to a standard action, a move action, and a minor action, and of course a number of free actions based on the DM's discrepancy. So a standard action is usually going to be your powers. If we go back into the powers and we look, most of these powers say it's going to take a standard action to perform this. You can see this one, no, oh, this is only a minor action. So you can see that once an encounter, she can do this Necus Assess, which is either going to be her or an ally within a close burst 5. She can choose one of these things. The target makes a saving throw, a target shifts up to 2 spaces as a free action, or the target gains a +2 power bonuses to all his or her attack rolls made before the end of his or her next turn. The target gains a +4 power bonus to his or her next skill check made before the end of her next turn. So you can see this is a minor action. So she could activate a standard action here. She could do her Frost Flash, which lets her do something as a standard action. She could then take a move, and then of course she could use her Knack for Success and activate another character or herself to do one of whatever she assigns, make a saving throw or whatever the case may be. So you have a standard action, which is normally going to be your powerful attacks, and even like a ranged basic attack is going to be standard action. So anytime you're basically attacking, trying to damage an enemy, whether that's through an at-will, an encounter power, or through a daily power, it's going to basically be a standard action. You do have a second wind. A second wind is a standard action. It lets you spend a healing surge and gain +2 bonus to all defenses until the start of your next turn. So that is still a standard action as well. Some characters can actually do that based on their race. I believe it's dwarves can do that as a minor action as opposed to a standard action. So you just have to figure out which one of these powers, what it takes to activate them, and keep track of that information. When you use a power in Fantasy Grounds, all we have to do is check it to show that we've used that encounter power, and we can keep track of it that way. One of the really cool features of Fantasy Grounds with 4th editions is I can actually double click on any of the powers. It will give us all the information about that power right here in the chat log so that the DM or the other players know exactly what you're doing. And that way we will have access to the information. We can see, okay, because you conjure a Spirit of Athea. You and your allies gain a +1 power bonus to all defenses, while adjacent to it is a standard action. You can dismiss the spirit and make the following melee 1 attack from the spirit square. One enemy, you can do it against its reflexes. If you hit, yada yada yada. Anyways, it gives you all the information about what power you're going to activate, and of course, then you can do your attack roll. From either the little tokens here, or you can actually come into your character, I shouldn't say your character, your powers spot. You can see it is going to be an ability versus reflex, and of course we could just take that dice out and drop it on whatever enemy we are targeting at the time. And of course the same thing with damage. Once we hit, we should be able to take 1d10. Okay, not sure why I'm not able to do that right now. Probably in the way it's typed in there. Let's see here. Yep, it's got a comma there. I'll have to look at that one later. Anyways, you can see like this one is obviously we can highlight that and just do the damage, just drop it on their head. Of course, it rolls it and automatically subtracts hit points. If this creature was immobilized, all I had to do was drag that over to the creature, and you can see that once I hover over it, it shows that he's wounded and immobilized. And of course, if we bring up our combat tracker, you will notice that on our combat tracker, it shows the effect. The character is immobilized from that power. And so when it gets to his turn, within Fantasy Grounds, we can see all the effects that are haunting that creature, and make sure that we apply all the necessary stuff. If we look at the monsters are set up very similarly. Being as though I will be recording this 4th edition campaign, you'll see it from the DM's perspective. Monsters are set up very similar to PCs, but not exactly. Of course, they were going to have a hit point total and a bloody total. It will also have all of your armor class, fortitude, and reflex, and will that the PCs can target. They will have a speed. Unlike powers that the PCs have, the monsters are going to have traits. So this is any kind of, say, a trait is equal to a monster, what the race's bonuses for PCs are. So a trait is basically just a bonus for that monster because it's that kind of monster. So in this case, the stalker can make a stealth check to become hidden when it has concealment instead of needing total concealment. So just basically a little trait. If they have some, if they don't have traits, we obviously won't see anything in there. Then we'll have a list of all their different actions. I would say 90% of the time they're going to have standard actions. Of course, they're going to have mostly standard actions. You might see sometimes a few that say minor action or move action or something like that. And of course, it shows us all of their different kinds of actions. So in this case, we have a shadowy touch. It shows a melee 1. Anytime it says melee in a number or whatever, that represents its range. So in this case, a melee 1, it has to be 1 space away. So if in this case, this monster would have to move here to use its melee 1 because it can only attack 1 space away. And of course, it'll have the damage there as well. It'll show you it's an at-will power or an encounter power or a daily power. The monsters usually don't have encounter powers or daily powers. What instead they have, and I'm really glad I chose this character, is that they have a recharge ability on them. So this power here will recharge when the stalker uses Shadow Step. Shadow Step is obviously down here. So they're going to have a set number of standard actions that will alter what they can do and react to how the PCs, what the PCs are doing against them. Then last but not least, we'll have some triggered actions, and these will be certain things that happen will trigger their actions on the battlefield. So for example, we have a trigger here. A living creature within 5 squares of the stalker drops to 0 hit points or fewer. A living creature. Notice it says a living creature, not a living ally. So this would be anybody, anytime, falls to 0 hit points, whether it's an ally or an enemy. And they will have an effect. So this is a free action. The stalker is going to teleport to a square adjacent to the triggering creature and gains a +2 bonus to attack rolls until the end of its next turn. So in this case, we can obviously, if this common bandit was to come up and attack, let's just say this guy was back here, attack Mira. Mira ends up knocking him and killing him, knocking him down to 0 points and killing him. At that point, this creature could obviously get his trigger effect and do his free action to teleport adjacent to the triggering creature. So this guy, he could actually trigger here, 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 anywhere adjacent to the bandit as a free action, which might throw the PCs in for a loop because they're not expecting this to happen, obviously, possibly, based on the scenario, or what they're commonly thinking is going on with the monsters. Of course, they have skills just like the PCs, and you can see out of stealth check, I got a plus 10 here, so obviously I just take that dice and roll it in there. I rolled a nice 21, so this guy has turned invisible to the PCs, so I could just take his visibility and make him invisible at this point. They don't know what happened to him. He just disappeared on them. And of course, they have all of the different strength, constitution, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Alignment, languages, and any kind of special effects or special information that needs to be known about the PCs, the monsters and NPCs, will be listed down here. One thing that's not on this character or monster, and we haven't actually talked about that are also incorporated on PCs as well, is something new. Let's see where it's actually located here. Action points. Here we are. So AP action points. So basically, each character has access to one action point. When they use it, they lose it until they earn themselves another one. And there's a couple ways they can earn one. When you take a long rest, you reset all your action points, so it would just come back. If you fight through two major encounters, without using an action point, or it doesn't matter if you use an action point, but once you make it through two encounters, you reach what they call a milestone in 4th edition, and then you have access to your action point again. So it kind of, I guess the theory behind this is to kind of not force, but kind of drive the PCs forward, as opposed to a lot of editions in Dungeons and Dragons, or a lot of players that like to, okay, we're going to fight these monsters, and now let's rest. Okay, everybody rest, healed. Okay, now let's go. Fight another group, and then what are we going to do? Oh, we got to rest, take our time. Oh my gosh. Okay, everybody healed up, everybody got their spells back. Okay, now let's go fight another group. Oh my gosh, yep, we fight this group. Oh, let's take another rest. Which just turns it into kind of a slow metagaming, just kind of a mismatch of flow for the DM and the PCs when PCs are constantly resting all the time and not just trompsing through the dungeon being brave warriors. So this is kind of an incentive for the PCs. Okay, we got through this encounter, let's go on to the next encounter, let's keep going through the dungeon before we take a rest and get our action points back. We get our action points back, we can use them, then we can use them during that battle, which will help us. We won't need to rest for the next battle, so it kind of keeps the flow more reasonable, as opposed to resting after every time you have an encounter. So the PCs have action points, and monsters, actually main monsters, and basically think of them as bosses, will also have access to action points, possibly several of them. If we look at, let's just bring up, say, if we go to, say, I don't know, let's look at a dragon and see if, let's see if there's like a named dragon here that I can show you really quickly. Oh, here's one. Let's see what he's got. Oh, in this case, you can see action points are actually at 0 for this creature, but you could actually add in 2 action points. So again, the same thing. An action point, I haven't actually talked about what an action point does, but it's pretty self-explanatory. An action point allows you to spend an action point to get an extra action. You can take any kind of extra action you want. So you can take an additional standard action, an additional move action, or an additional minor action. Most likely you want to spend it to take a standard action, but of course that's up to you as the piece, as the character, because that's going to give you access to a lot of your powers and such. And for example, when you have access to some of the powers that we've already looked at earlier, that one of the characters, I think it was Mira here, gives she can give the target gains a +2 power bonus on his or her attack rolls made before the end of his or her next turn. So in this case, if Mira was to give this bonus to Shira, she's going to get a +2 to all of her attacks until the end of her next turn. So that would be a great time for Shira to use her standard action to do an attack. Maybe use her nice Armor of Winter's Grasping power. It's a standard action. Activate this power, do a move, do a minor, and then use your action point to maybe do another really nice encounter power to get that second standard action to help really get that all of her bonuses that she can get applied to her character. So action points obviously are kind of an encounter thing that you can use to kind of sway the encounter by getting that one extra action. But of course, the monsters can do that as well. Some of the named monsters, not all the monsters have access to this. As you can see, just our normal Joe Shadow Stalker here, he has no access to any kind of special action points. But if I was to make this Shadow Stalker a boss character, I could just simply give him a couple action points to use throughout the encounter to make him a lot tougher, because instead of his allies just doing one attack, he could activate a couple times during his action to do some serious damage to the PCs. So action points, pretty interesting way of getting some new and interesting things to happen throughout combat. So this is just a quick overview of 4th edition again, kind of give everyone a brief overview for those of you who don't know much about it or haven't had much of a chance to look into 4th edition. I just want you to be able to follow along as we're playing through this 4th edition campaign and kind of understand what's going on. Of course, we'll run into some issues and trying to figure out how everything incorporates, and but eventually it'll run a lot smoother if you all understand exactly what we're doing and can see when we're talking about things throughout the campaign, and when we're looking at different powers and such. If I have questions to the PCs or whatever, you can kind of see what we're talking about if you're not familiar with the actual 4th edition rules. This way you kind of have an understanding of what we're talking about as we're going through this wonderful campaign. Monday nights will be our 4th edition campaign. I surely do hope you can stop in and watch some of the episodes that we're going to be playing with a brand new group of players. And we'll be bringing that to you guys every Monday night for this foreseeable future. And we're going to be starting tonight, as a matter of fact. So hopefully you'll be able to tune in for that and watch as our PCs get a taste of 4th edition in Fantasy Grounds. So thanks so much for watching. Be sure to leave any thoughts, comments, suggestions below. And we'll see you guys later on as we start our brand new 4th edition campaign. Thanks for watching.